Listen, if you feel like you're earning just enough to barely survive, but never quite enough to actually relax, you have been sold a massive lie. Today, in this explainer, we are completely shattering the biggest illusion that is keeping you trapped in the endless paycheck to paycheck cycle. You've probably been conditioned your whole life to believe that if you just magically made more money, everything would finally stabilize, right? Well, we're going to break down 10 incredibly brutal yet highly effective strategies that prove otherwise. We're grouping them by theme today, and together, they reveal a framework based on some pretty intense Machiavellian principles. And by the end of this, you'll see that true wealth isn't really about the size of your salary at all. It's entirely about your strategy. This brings us to a really fascinating, centuries-old warning from Machiavelli that perfectly diagnoses our modern financial stress. I mean, think about it. We live in a system that is practically designed from the ground up to make us spend faster than we earn. Between targeted algorithmic advertising, social media constantly screaming that you deserve it, and the relentless lure of easy financing, none of this is random. It is completely intentional, engineered to extract your wealth. People feel destroyed and trapped not because they lack opportunity out there, but because they are unknowingly playing inside a rigged system they just don't fully understand yet. So here is the core truth we need to internalize right out of the gate. Income is not power, control is. If you're secretly believing that the next promotion or the next raise is going to magically fix all your stress, you are setting yourself up for a really massive disappointment. Because when your income increases but your spending habits don't change, the anxiety stays exactly the same. It just comes with bigger numbers. You don't feel trapped because your salary is too small. You feel trapped because you simply lack control over where it goes. Real wealth begins the absolute moment your behavior changes, not when your paycheck grows. All right, let's jump right into strategy 1, the income illusion. This is our foundational mindset shift. Let's talk about a young John D. Rockefeller for a second. Long before he built a sprawling oil empire, created massive monopolies, and amassed billions of dollars, he was just a regular, everyday bookkeeper surviving on a very modest income. But he had one absolute rule. He treated his future self as his most important creditor. Think about your own life. You pay your landlord rent, you pay the utility company, you pay for endless streaming subscriptions you probably barely even use. But what about you? Rockefeller understood that paying yourself first, even if it's just a tiny, seemingly insignificant amount, fundamentally rewires your identity. It declares to the world that building your own wealth is simply non-negotiable. And that daily discipline gave him total control long before he ever possessed actual power. Okay, be honest with me for a second. Have you ever opened up your banking app on a Sunday morning and thought, wait, where did it all go? That sinking feeling of vanished money isn't theft. It's a complete lack of strategy. Imagine you're exhausted on a Thursday night. You order food for $30, but then you add an $8 service fee, a $6 delivery fee, a $4 tip, and suddenly almost $50 is just gone for one simple, entirely forgettable meal. None of it feels like a big, life-altering decision in the moment. It just feels automatic, like breathing, and that is exactly why it's so dangerous. So here is the brutal reality. Until you expose those tiny little leaks, absolutely no amount of discipline will ever be enough. Money doesn't just vanish into thin air. It escapes, quietly, repeatedly, and entirely invisibly. Financial power is very rarely taken from you in one big, dramatic, catastrophic move. Instead, it's slowly siphoned away through hundreds of small, seemingly harmless, everyday transactions. If you actively refuse to look at exactly where it's going, you are choosing to operate completely blind.
Which brings us perfectly to our defense phase. Strategies 2 and 3, stopping invisible money leaks. This is about tracking every dollar like it owes you rent. This is exactly how the Rothschild banking empire built their formidable power. They certainly didn't track transactions because they were cheap. They did it because they knew that absolute awareness creates massive leverage. Look at the progression here. On day 1, you just track the transaction. By week 1, you start to analyze the movement and spot the leaks. By month 1, you can finally redirect that wealth toward your own goals. And by year 1, you've created real compounding leverage. You simply cannot redirect wealth if you have no idea where it's currently flowing. The cold, hard numbers on your bank statement do not care about your excuses. They show pure patterns, and your patterns reveal your actual identity. I want you to think about the massive difference between looking rich and actually being free. We live in a society that heavily rewards the appearance of wealth over the reality of it. But let me tell you, the person driving a 10-year-old, fully paid-off car who is consistently investing every single month has significantly more power than someone driving a brand new luxury car that's financed to the absolute hilt.
Delaying gratification by living quietly below your means creates margin in your life. Margin creates options, and options, that creates true, unbreakable power. Okay, so once you've created that margin, it's time to go on the offense. Let's look at strategies 4 and 6, building quiet income, because surviving just isn't enough anymore. Forget that whole toxic 24/7 hustle culture. Seriously. Your true goal here is to build boring, quiet income systems that earn without constant, flashy effort. You do absolutely not need to destroy your physical and mental health working 16 hours a day. True wealth building is about creating a digital product once and selling it repeatedly, maybe taking on some low-stress freelance work or casually flipping undervalued items on the weekends. It's not loud, it's not flashy, and it probably won't go viral on social media. But an extra few $100 a month invested properly over a decade, that completely rewires who you are. You evolve into someone with built-in backup systems.
Warren Buffett totally understood this deeply, even as a teenager saving literal pennies from a paper route. Investing even tiny amounts is all about claiming ownership and declaring that your future actually matters. So many people hesitate to invest because they mistakenly think a small amount is just too insignificant to make a dent. But the dollar amount isn't the point at all. The point is the training, it's the repetition. Wealthy thinking relentlessly focuses on owning assets, while broke thinking focuses exclusively on spending. Spending disappears instantly to make someone else rich, but ownership compounds quietly to make you free. All right, let's level up. Strategies 7, 8, and 9. Rich math and stealth wealth. This is where we multiply your leverage and dodge the traps designed to keep you broke.
You've probably heard of the standard 50-30-20 budgeting rule, right? It's a decent starting point for basic survival, but if we want true freedom, we have got to push much further. Most people budget totally backwards. They look at their rent, their bills, their desired lifestyle, and if anything miraculously happens to be left over at the end of the month, they save it. Even with this standard rule, allocating a full 30% to your wants before your savings leaves you incredibly vulnerable. It's a highly reactive strategy, not an intentional one. But now, let's aggressively flip that script to what we call the rich math rule. By actively prioritizing wealth over wants, someone earning a totally modest salary can absolutely crush a high earner who spends everything they make. Rich math is fiercely intentional. It demands to know what a purchase will cost you in lost compounding interest over a decade, not just whether you can technically afford the monthly payment today. By aggressively locking in 30% for wealth building before you ever even touch your wants, you create an unstoppable financial engine. You stop letting temporary comfort rob you of your future freedom. But to protect that 30%, you absolutely have to ruthlessly eliminate these normalized middle-class debt traps. Make no mistake, these are literally designed by financial institutions to cost you your freedom. That massive monthly car payment, the buy now, pay later outfit, or that 0% interest TV might feel like free access to a better life in the moment, but they are invisible chains. Financial systems generate massive profits when you are deeply dependent, not when you are wealthy. If your entire lifestyle relies on making these monthly minimum payments, you can't ever walk away from a toxic job or a bad situation. Debt costs you your freedom. It really is that simple. And that brings us to our final phase, strategies 5 and 10, automating your empire. Because human consistency, it's just not reliable enough. Because here is a fundamental truth. Discipline is incredibly fragile, but systems are not. The secret here is that you don't fight temptation, you outsmart it entirely by making your money completely untouchable. Think about it. The very second a little extra cash starts stacking up in your checking account, that powerful urge to reward yourself kicks in. If your money is easy to access, it is incredibly easy to destroy. You don't need to read yet another self-help book on self-control. What you actually need is extreme friction between your present self and your immediate impulses. So we use what I like to call the untouchable system. By following a few rigid steps, out of sight magically becomes untouched wealth a year later. First, you open a completely separate account at a totally different bank. Second, absolutely do not get a debit card for it. And whatever you do, do not install their convenient little app on your phone. Third, automate a transfer the very moment your paycheck hits. And fourth, literally forget that money exists. This is exactly how average earners quietly save massive, life-changing amounts over time. Not by being inherently smarter or more disciplined, but just by removing the temptation to spend entirely. This is what the ultimate wealth system actually looks like in practice.
It executes without ever asking how you feel, quietly compounding your wealth in the background while you go about living your life. Listen, you are not always going to wake up feeling disciplined, motivated, or frugal. But automation? Automation absolutely does not care about your mood. It does the heavy lifting for you, rain or shine. The really beautiful paradox of wealth is that the less you have to manually think about your money on a daily basis, the more consistently and aggressively it grows. So as we wrap up this explainer today, I want to leave you with one final thought to reflect on. Silence and automation are your true weapons here. You don't need a massive income to start building wealth. You need superior behavior, airtight systems, and absolute control. Fast results are loud and flashy, but real, generational progress is heavily protected by silence. So ask yourself right now, honestly, are you going to keep funding a system that is specifically designed to keep you trapped? Or who are you becoming today? Thanks so much for joining me for this deep dive, and I will catch you on the next explainer.